What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another video from Pink Tourmaline. And this video is about Eckhart Tolle and a conversation, a YouTube video that I found involving him. And it's talking about consciousness, but it also ties back into a theme that we've heard so many times from near-death experiences. And I wanted to share it with you guys. And I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. I believe it's Eckhart Tolle. That's my recollection. But if you guys are into spirituality, self-development, you must have heard of him. So I'm just going to read this little bio in case you haven't heard of him. So he's a spiritual teacher and a best-selling author, best known for The Power of Now and A New Earth. Power of Now, I actually read that, or I actually listened to it on tape. I remember during a long drive back in 2016 or 15, I want to say, because I vaguely remember, I think it was driving to San Francisco on a really long drive, and I listened to it, and it was amazing. And it's just the book. Let me try and remember as best I can, but I remember reading, and it blew my mind because it was talking about how if your thoughts are always going and you're always thinking about tomorrow and the next day, and which my mind does, it races. I actually have ADHD. I just discovered not too long ago. But when your mind races, which I always used to think was a great benefit and an awesome thing about my brain, I liked it. I was always problem solving, working out things, etc. He actually talked about you becoming a slave to your mind. And in fact, you can't turn off the thinking, where instead, one of the things that we should strive to do is just focus on the current moment now, and just being, when you focus on now and the present moment and not thinking about the past or the future, you can really be in a blissful state. I hope I'm doing a good job of summarizing a piece of the book. Obviously, there's much more content, amazing content in there, but when I listened to this, I guess you could say, it blew my mind because I'd never read or listened to anything like this. So anyways, that's how I know of him. And these are books that popularize a practical approach to mindfulness and presence in everyday life. Born in Germany and later based in Canada, he describes undergoing a profound inner shift in his late 20s after a period of intense anxiety and depression, an experience that became central to his teaching. Tolle's work blends accessible language with ideas drawn from contemplative traditions without being tied to a single religion, focusing on reducing psychological suffering by noticing thought patterns, loosening identification with the ego, and returning attention to the present moment through simple awareness practices. This guy is the man. Now, what we're going to talk about next, what we're going to go to next, is we're going to go to this amazing interview in this excerpt where he talks about consciousness. And it's also tied into a theme that we see all the time from near-death experiences in terms of why we are here, why we incarnate, why we live the lives we do. And it all comes down to this central message of the purpose of life being primarily about learning. We learn through actions, through interactions, through things that we're supposed to do, things that we're not supposed to do, right? Mistakes as well, and the repercussions of those mistakes. So I'm going to play it right here. And then he also talks about this idea of consciousness, one consciousness. This is not only discussed in spiritual circles, but also in circles of science. When we hear some of the greatest physicists of all time have said that there is only one consciousness in the entire universe, aka we are all connected. We feel that we have our own separate consciousness, but instead we are all little droplets of water that seem to derive from the same ocean, the same singular source. This anyway seems to be the message that is echoed over and over. So anyways, we're going to let Eckhart take it away. This is a beautiful message. Check it out.
You are the consciousness that inhabits the form, and that consciousness is inseparable from the one consciousness. There is no separate consciousness. Consciousness does not have a plural. There are no consciousnesses. Consciousness is a singular. There's only one consciousness that manifests, as we could call it, a ray, or as a ray of consciousness. You are this ray of consciousness. As a ray of consciousness, consciousness is not subject to birth and death, so it is timeless. This ray of consciousness that you appear as this particular person does not necessarily immediately dissolve into total anonymity. It remains in most cases as a particular ray, but it's not the person anymore. What happens then, it returns briefly to the source in the same way that a bee goes to the beehive and deposits what it has collected. And every human is the one consciousness experiencing and learning and evolving in some way. Even the most insignificant life form is the one consciousness evolving and learning. And what it has learned, not the details, but the essence, it contributes something to the whole. That is an intuition that came to me some time ago. And
so that's it right there. And he echoes the same sentiment, the same idea that we hear in so many near-death experiences, is that we are here to learn. And then he illustrates beautifully, I feel like, and I love that analogy of a bee going back to the beehive. So it's like us going back to source with this new knowledge. And again, it's not knowledge of like physics of the universe or how things work. It's not that type of knowledge, but I believe what he's referring to is experiential knowledge from the interactions that we have, emotional knowledge, just understanding how we affect other people and how they affect us. And having that knowledge, I imagine, like I said in previous videos, must affect or impact our soul's vibration or energy or whatnot. And then we come back with that new vibration, with that new signature. That was the term that was from another NDE. And then we go back to source. So I imagine this is some sort of a collective effort on all our parts to gather this information, gather pollen like a bee, and then return to the hive and maybe enrich the hive, enrich the source. And we go on and on in that same pattern. And anyways, so this again echoes those same sentiments that we've heard multiple times from NDEs, coming from a legend in the game, a legendary speaker, a legendary author, and just a great person in this space who knows so much about consciousness, about why we are here, Eckhart Tolle. So I want to share this with you guys. I think it's a beautiful message, a positive message, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you guys so much for joining. We'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.